I'm super excited to begin talking right now to our next guest. This gentleman is somebody that I admire so greatly. He is one of my personal friends, but he was my boss for a very long time. His name is Joe Panebianco. Did my screen stop sharing? Yes, it's just us, right? Okay, great. Joe, are you here?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can I see you? There you are. Well, everyone, this is the CEO of Annie Mac Home Mortgage. I worked for Annie Mac for 12 years. I will tell you, this man, I know he's not going to want me to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. He's so brilliant, economically minded. He does this incredible economic news for his company every morning. And as one of his senior leaders for sales for 12 years, and by the way, building a company from the market implosion together and straight up through all kinds of different markets, we had to navigate. And Joe was the person who was at the helm of the ship I rode on for 12 years. And because of that, I trusted explicitly that he knew where we needed to go, when we needed to go, could do the tough calls and whatnot. I'm going to interview Joe for you over the next 30 minutes, and I'm really excited to bring his expertise here. So Joe, it's really nice to have you here.
Yeah, it's great. It's great being here, Christine. I will tell you that, I know you've got a large following. You're one of the few people in your industry that has actually done from the ground up what they're preaching, right? I know a bunch of folks who they mean well and they're doing great, but when push comes to shove, you're not quite sure what to make of their advice because they've never actually done it, right? So you've done it. You've done a great job. Loved working with you all those years. Love you personally, and very happy to be here. Very happy to be here.
Wow.
I hope I can. I hope I can not embarrass myself after that really nice but probably overhyped introduction.
No, well, you're always so humble, but I know you crush it. And I will say this too, we always have Joe at the Vision Summit. He crushed it last year on stage. We're going to have him back again this year. So please tune in. Please follow this guy as well. He's on all social platforms. I thank you, Joe, personally, not to make this a personal moment, for trusting a chick to your sales division at a time when picking female leaders probably wasn't exactly the most popular. And so kudos to Joe for that too, right? So anyways, yeah, let's get into the interview. I have some questions written down here that I know you'll be great at answering. The first one is, what do the next 6 to 12 months look like for the mortgage industry?
Okay. So I'll start by saying that, and you made a great reference, Christine, before, to tides rising and tides going down, right? So I think you need to look at your performance in this industry over a cycle, which is 3 to 5 years, right? So if you were to say, how well have you done in the mortgage industry, and you're just looking at 2020, you'd be somewhat delusional, right? And I would say, if you look at 2022 and say, how have I done in this mortgage industry based on that year, it would also be somewhat suspect, right? So having said that, the tide is changing and changing rapidly. Now, I'm not here to do a scared straight speech. I am going to tell you that there's plenty of opportunity, and I'll tell you where. But I will tell you, over the next 6 months, some of the dramatic changes are. I read this great journal article the other day saying that if you are under 40, you've never seen an aggressive Fed, meaning a Fed tightening, and that is true. When you go back, we've had 4 or 5 significant periods where inflation has ramped up after World War II. So you had the 50s, 60s, 70s, and of course, from 68 to 83 or so was the longest period. Inflation was up about 200% over that time period. But since that period, the Fed has been able to manage through that using fiscal and using monetary policy. So we're going from a very easy Fed to a Fed that is trying to save a little face. They've let inflation and employment run a little too hot. Asset prices have gone a little too high, in their opinion. So the market is pricing in at least 3 or 4 rate increases this year. There's probably going to be more. That in and of itself is not terribly problematic, although not ideal. But they have a balance sheet, several $1 trillion worth of mortgage and asset MBS and treasuries, which they might allow to run off that will reduce further liquidity. I say this from the great context of, I don't think interest rates are going to 5%. I don't think you'll see a 5% 30-year mortgage, but I do think you're going to see interest rates go high enough that will still continue to be supportive of the purchase market and not terribly supportive of a rate and term market. I love your session on cash out refinance, so I'm not going to reiterate what you said much better than I could. That is a real area of opportunity for folks. I don't know if people realize this, but the home equity is up to about 4 trillion. So that's T with a trillion. That's larger than it's ever been. Do you have any more of that, Christine? Do you have enough for everyone to share? So it's up more than it's been. It's a great resource for us, but I don't look at a tale of two products. I think purchases will look very much like 2021. They're still demand is still strong. Affordability is still there. You know, we're going to have the inventory problem. COVID, this recent bout of COVID hasn't helped. It sort of slowed the process down where people are a little bit back in lockup. But rate and term is going to be challenging. You know, if you want to know how much it should be down, you know, if you just look at the NBA, they're projecting something like 60% now. I love the NBA, but they're never right? They're always off a little bit, right? As all economists are. So, you know, but after 6 months, it gets a little bit more challenging, and I'll tell you why. So if you look at the Treasury yield curve, you would think, and I don't want to get too deep in the woods here, but you would think if you didn't know what happened the last few years, and you were a market expert and you looked at the Treasury yield curve, you would say, what do you think is going to happen? And you would say, it's indicating recession, which is weird. You think, listen, I'm still waiting for Christmas gifts that should be delivered. And you're telling me, you know, things are slowing down. But, you know, if you have to look at what's been juicing the economy for a long period of time, we've had forbearance where it was a great thing. People needed it, but you could argue there are people that maybe didn't need it. There's savings coming from that. Forbearance is ending. That's I think a good thing overall. Government stimulus checks have stopped. You know, the savings rate is starting to go back down a little bit. And the key point I'll make is that the Federal Reserve has almost never gone on a tightening cycle that hasn't created some form of recession. So you say, okay, so the Fed's going to tighten for maybe 5 times this year. They're going to do it in succession. They're going to want to get a hold of inflation because they understand how damaging that can be. You know, the great example I've always heard is the Federal Reserve tightening rates is the equivalent of a surgeon operating on you with an axe, right? He's going to cut, but it's not going to be pretty, right? And so to that end, it would not surprise me if after the third quarter this year, we started to get some relief in terms of rates. I will add that, you know, if you look back and Barry, I don't know what he's going to talk about, but I'd love to hear his opinion on this because he's a really smart guy. I love his advice. It's taken these mature economies like the US, lower and lower interest rates to maintain the same economic growth. So I've probably spoken too long on this topic, Christine, more than you wanted to hear, but
no, I think you're on the right path. And I think I just want to insert this and I want you to keep going. You know, you have a few hundred mortgage experts and real estate experts on here right now, and this will be listened by hundreds of more, probably thousands of more people when we put it into our learning dashboard. This is what they need to hear. I don't know that a lot of leaders spend the time with mortgage experts. I've been fortunate enough to grow up under your tutelage. I consider myself an economic expert of sorts, not at your level or Barry's, but it's because of these discussions where you take something that's very complex and you break it down layman wise. So please keep going. I'm with you so far. I think that we'll get to a part where if they have a question, they can put it in the chat about something, but no, keep going. Doing great.
So the question is, you know, it's that warrior philosopher type thing, right? You can read all you want, but it doesn't amount to a hill of beans unless you take action. Right? Again, you nailed it in your opener, right? You know, if you're the owner of a company, if you are a branch manager, if you have a P&L underneath you, you need to start moving. You don't need to see the whites of the eyes of a slowdown until you know it's upon you, right? The great thing is that unless you are the worst mortgage originator in the world, you did well. right? And even if you were the worst originator in the world, you probably still did well during 20 and 22, during 20 and 21. So you've got a war chest, and your job is to make sure that you are, a wise steward of that war chest, right? So you need to face reality as it is. And what is the reality?
Yeah.
You need to understand your cost structure first and foremost. Most people say they know their break even, but they don't really know their break even, or they don't know it in a way that if you perturb it, if you stress test it, what happens to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you get your break even, you also have to take into consideration that because there is a war chest of money out there, and it happens every single cycle, you're going to see these companies that are going to say, I can outrun this with volume. And after a few months, they're going to look at their bottom line and say, I can't outrun this with volume, right? You can't outrun this with volume because you never know what your equilibrium is, because as margins compress, as people get more competitive, you need even more volume. And then, it starts a cycle where, sure, you want to be as aggressive as possible to your consumers to make sure you can support your ecosystem, but at the same time, you got to be prudent. That means understanding your cost structure, making tough decisions when and where you have to,
Mm-hmm.
and really understanding that, we're approaching what I like to call, and it's a bit hyperbolic, but it's almost like we're about to enter a war zone, right? And so you're going to have a different strategy. You need to be more defensive. Make sure that your perimeter is secure. Make sure that you understand where your people are, understand where your numbers are, and maintain your dry powder, because when the turn comes, as it always does,
Mm-hmm.
and again, I'd be curious to hear other people's views on this, but if I am right, and it turns around a little bit, come the third, fourth quarter this year, you're going to want that dry powder. You're going to want to show that you can be an operator under any condition. And that's what people recruit to. That's what people want to be. They want to know they're secure. They want to know that you're doing the things that are going to protect them long term. And again, then you look at your performance over a cycle. Then you'll be able to say, 2021, great years. 2022, tough year. But if you look at my entrances at 2021 to my exit in 2023, damn, I did the right things when it was busy.
Yep.
I did the right things when it was slow. And I'm even further than where I thought I could have been if I'd ignore all those things.
Yeah. We just had a question. Well said. Excellent points of view. Really tactical information. But I'm gonna break down what Joe just said for a minute before I go into the next question. And we have Camille asking a really good question. You can look at it in the chat line about how to position yourself if you're a new person in the business. I don't think any of us can wait till the fourth quarter, maybe the third quarter, for that relief that we're going to see with rates, which is coming back to the top of my message with the pivot has to occur now. We're pushing our mortgage professionals that are coaching and consulting here in this direction as fast and hard as we can. If you're a veteran loan originator or a veteran realtor listening right now, and you have had the wins and the benefits of a lot of money earned in the last few years from the wins in the sale of the low rate economy, great, good for you. Hope you stored some nuts. I hope we learned something from past markets. I'm old enough now that I did. But if you didn't, if you went out and you went crazy and now you're panicking because you're in this declining volume market with a rising rate situation, don't fret. This is not 2007 and 2008. It is not the same market. There is, as I said before, there is business to be had, but you have to have the right digital strategies. You got to be willing to have the in-depth conversations. We will be doing a number of sales classes this year to get into the scripting of conversation. Let me say this boldly and bluntly. I'm not a fan of scripts. I've never used them. I speak from here. It sounds better. I have taught all my salespeople to do the same. However, as it relates to telling you how to have these conversations, I'm willing to put some things in scripts so that you have a guide at least to look at it. I would not suggest you read from it. That said, it is the question that your consumer is going to have that I know are most common objections in this market, that we really, as a sales force in the mortgage industry, need to be able to come over. So hear me right now. If you're a regional, a senior, an executive, whatever your role is, if you're leading salespeople, the conversation for training in January, February, March, it has to go to a place where I can teach you how to overcome the most common and likely objections that the consumer is going to have with you. We are fighting a tide of people that, despite sitting on this enormous equity, will not do anything with it. And again, do I think you're going to convince that guy to do something with it if he's got the grandfather strategy of pay my mortgage off? I don't know. And I don't know that that's the best use of your time, but I do think you're going to skim with your nets a ton more fish if you are out there digitally strategized as somebody. Talk to me about what your equity is doing for you. Talk to me about how a higher interest rate could bring you wealth, leveraging your equity. Please give me a call. I would call all day long if I really trusted the person. So I'm going to lean on the fact that our veteran guys have established relationships and people are going to want to talk to you. If you can ask that question, great, but then you don't know where to carry that conversation. That's where we will help you go from the conversation past the objection. So stay tuned. We're going to talk more about that. Really great, thought-provoking conversation. And again, what are you doing for your realtors this year? I just had a coaching session this morning with somebody that has an enormous realtor relationship, did not get distracted with the refi market the last 2 years, stayed in the pocket, kept their realtors soaring, and they're struggling because there's no inventory. So they didn't move over. They may even have a little regret that they didn't grab some of the cash wave of the refi market that they were in, but they stayed focused on their core business, but the core business is still suffering a little. So this is the year, guys, that you got to bring your realtors really powerful relationships. And so again, I don't want to keep promoting 2020, but I do want you to use the resources here. And so I don't mind shamelessly plugging, because a lot of you are our clients, that on January 19th, we are doing a real estate business session. You can invite your realtors. It's a thing of value. Give it to them. Get them in the seats, because you want strong relationships. If your funnels are going to be thinner because of inventory, then you better have a hell of a lot of realtors filing into those funnels. Joe, coming back to question number 2 that I've got written down, what are some tips for the CEOs or branch managers that are staying ahead of the curve? And Camille, I just realized I didn't answer you, but I will before the session's over.
Sure. So, I want to touch on something you just said, which I think is really topical and really smart. Is that you also have to understand that cash out refinance client. There's a big educational gap between rate and term and cash out refinance. So, for example, if you were to ask the average person on the street what it meant to refinance and whether it was a good thing, they would all say, well, you refinance and maybe save a couple $100 a month, and it's probably a little bit of a pain with paperwork, but it's great, right? When you now talk to somebody about, cash out and maybe higher mortgage rate, and it's an educational process. So to your digital marketing efforts, you can start attacking that without even touching base with them by putting out content that is very easy for them to use, very easy to understand. So I'm definitely dating myself here, but I remember probably the best commercial I ever saw for that was the Champion Mortgage guy, who would stand up there on a TV with a whiteboard and say, you've got credit card debt, you've got home debt, you've got this, it's going to cost you this, you're savings of that. Keep it simple, right? But start educating them through your digital network, start educating them through your socials. And then when you have that discussion, I'm like, we all as an industry have to get the consumer aware of what that is. And the reality of it is, it's only going to help them. We're talking about the statistics for home equity, but we haven't spoken about the statistics for revolving debt outstanding, student loan debt outstanding. Yeah. It's also at historic highs. And unfortunately, there's a large wealth disparity, not just in this country, but in the world. And so most of the debt is carried by most of the people who are least likely to be able to hold it, but thankfully for them, who have a lot of equity. So we're really doing them a quality service. What do you think? For most of them, right? We're doing them a quality service to perform these. So that's one specific action. I mentioned another one, which I can't stress enough. Everyone is so focused on getting more revenue, getting more, volume, and that is awesome. You need to do that. You need volume drives everything, and volume also cures a lot of ills. But a dollar of revenue after expenses might fall down to the bottom line in pennies, right? 25, 30, whatever that cents is. But a dollar in cost savings is immediately accretive to the bottom line. You save a dollar, you get a dollar, right? So I think really get to know your P&L, really get to understand what your fixed costs are, what your variable costs are, and then the last point I'll make for today, because I know we're short on time, is capacity utilization. I call it. You should know what the industry standard is for your processors, for your underwriters, for your closers, right? And as much as, you know, you have to coach people up to those standards, right? If you have a processor who's handling 50 loans and you have another processor that's doing 25 loans and they're both great, and you have to understand why, right? Maybe you're overstaffed. Maybe that the one who's doing those 25 loans has much more difficult loans in his or her pipeline. But the end of the day is you're going to need to find ways to be more productive, more efficient, understand your fixed costs, and try to make as many dollars as possible fall to the bottom line during these next, and I'd say these next 3 months are probably more important than ever.
Yeah, you're with me. We're on the same wavelength, 1,000% right now. And of course, I seek so much guidance from you, even in offering economic direction for the consulting firm here. So it's great. I have a couple more questions. We have about literally 6 minutes left before I'm introducing the next speaker. I think I can get both answers out of you, so I'm going to keep my commentary down a little bit. But I just want everybody that's here to know we're going to keep coming with the sales strategies in this vein. So what you're hearing right here might be news to you, some of you. For others of you, I think you've heard this before, for me at least, over the last 30 to 45 days, this pivotal moment in your sales tactics, not only the fishing for, the marketing, the voice, how you're attracting people to you for the discussions this year, becoming a mortgage expert. Camille, you asked what do new people do? I think it's the same exact thing. You know, you're trying to build realtor relationships, obviously at a time when existing loan officers are trying to get business, you know, kind of water from a rock type of thing. So you have a little bit of an uphill battle, but we have the strategies here. And I know you're in the classrooms, Camille, that are teaching you those real estate connection, warm opening strategies and digital strategies. So guys, you know, there's a process here. It's sales, and then it's you know, it's starting the discussion, but then it's being able to overcome the objections. It's going to do you no good to post, talk to me about becoming wealthy this year with your equity. And then you get in the conversation and 9 of your borrowers are going to say, yeah, no, I'm not going to take equity out of my home because I'm sitting on a 2.5% interest rate and you're offering me, you know, a 3.5% interest rate, and literally are willing to soar into the sunset of our futures, giving up 100,000, 200,000, maybe more, depending on how much equity they have, and literally come this close to become a wealthier person and just doesn't capitalize on it. That's basically where we are. We're either going to advise some of these people to convert this wealth and really believe you, and you're either going to be believable because we educate you on how to be an expert this year and you become one and you can get into that conversation and wrestle those objections, or you're not. But we're going to keep teaching that. My 2 questions for Joe are this. I'm going to read them both out loud so you can answer both of them in the return. FHFA is placing large hits on investor and second home properties, which has been a discussion for a lot of our students behind the scenes. Do you view this as a bad thing for IMBs? That's number 1. Speaking of government sponsored entities, is there anything else you see coming down the pike in terms of changes to products and programs? So just to break that down for everybody that's listening, you know, our investment compliance guidelines and vehicles will capitalize themselves sometimes on where the market's going. That's a little bit about what we're talking about. And also, is there more programs coming in the future?
Okay. Thank you for that. So I'll make one comment first on what you just said on our back and forth, is that, you know, the education is the key. So what I should have said when I was talking about the educational gap between rate and term and cash out refinance is that as a rate and term, you know, guy or girl, you are a transactional advisor. In order to become more of a financial advisor, so you're helping these people for the long term, you need to educate yourself. You need to go through dry runs with people. You need to be able to, you know, get a designation or certification. You need to be able to hold your own in that, because once people believe that you know what you're talking about and you can validate to them with actual data, right? And you're building that relationship, then you have them, right? And then, you know, for new people out there, the goal is to do a great job with that one person and then get them to give you referrals. Hey, if somebody does a great job for me, I can tell you, and I'm a hard guy to please. If somebody does a great job because I know I have a high bar, I always pass them on. I feel it's good karma to do that. So So FHA, yes. So I actually view this, and if people could, I would say, throw tomatoes at me through the screen, just hold off before you throw it. I actually view this as a very good thing for our industry. And I know a lot of people do seconds. I know a lot of people do investment properties. Just hear me out.
Yeah.
There has been so much heat on the agencies and on the government, because essentially, think of the people that fit into that second home bucket, right? They are probably wealthy. It's probably a large part of probably beach houses, investment properties. And so there's a very fragmented government, Congress, obviously. There's a lot of people who want to undo Fannie and Freddie in totality. With the exit of Calabria, that sort of lost a lot of wind, but they're still back there. They're still hammering away. Giving this relief valve to them really takes pressure off of us, and it allows us to do other things, right? So what are those other things, right? So, well, let me take a step back. I'll also tell you that, although I don't trade this every day, I will tell you that there's some very clear guidance that suggests that 100% pools for second homes and investment properties with better delinquency characteristics, better prepayment characteristics, are actually going to, in very short order, probably going to be better off through the private market than it is through the agency market. So this is not a matter of, oh my God, 20% of my business is second homes and investment properties. It's out 2 to 4 points. I'm in big trouble. What it is that, so the market readjusts. And when Calabria was here, you remember, we actually were getting the beginnings of a private market up and running. When the market adjusts, it'll adjust, and we'll be back to where we were. It's very healthy for the market, takes a lot of heat off. So what are the other things they can do? There's a lot of talk about the budget not getting through, but there's a lot of discretion in the federal government. They're still looking to target first-time home buyers with either down payment assistance programs and things of that nature that have not been crossed off. You're likely to see the agencies themselves help drive this, because anything, as I said before, anything that requires congressional approval is not moving. We've got a stagnant government system that is so focused, I don't want to get too far down this, but so focused on beating each other, they're not thinking about the public, right? So having said all that, they're going to move the levers that they can. One of the things that I actually think is very reasonable, maybe by the end of this first quarter, we have to see what happens with forbearance a little bit, is an upfront MIP cut and maybe even a life of loan cut. So the congressionally mandated capital reserve for FHA, for government, for the government loans is 2%, right? We're about 4 times that amount. So by any measure, even when the CBO takes into consideration a 2008 type housing crisis, it is overfunded, right? So I think we'll get some relief there. What exactly is going to have to be left up to smarter people than me, more connected people for sure. But 25, 50 basis points would not be a surprise. It's certainly going to be very helpful. I think we're going to see more of a swing towards government business, which is going to be very helpful for both borrowers, but as well as for P&Ls. So that would not surprise me. That's something else that I think is very reasonable that we should be looking for. Certainly,
yeah, and that can really affect a business. I remember when I was with you and Obama did his legacy reduction of the MIP, and I think he did a 3/4 reduction, and we saw what, a 40% increase in volume overnight, and we literally went from 3-day turn times to 20-something turn times, and that's a problem to solve too. It's a wonderful problem to have, but you see it in these type of levers to pull, like you say, that creates volume of business and whatnot. And everybody needs to understand that is going to be a strategy that you can then use. If you see something like that happen, you're going to hear me in the weekly sales meeting, bring it to your attention. That's why it's important to come to the Tuesday weekly sales meeting, so that any economic type movements like that, I can tell you what to do in your businesses with it, because there is a reaction to these types of things that help you capitalize on picking up, mortgage sales and real estate sales when these things occur. You know, people that hold government loans today, if there's an MIP reduction, they're obviously going to stand to save money, even though the rate hasn't moved. So that's, you know, why you see that type of movement. So we are at the end of our time. Joe, is there any final words you want to give everybody?
Yep, there is actually. You know, I don't want to be seen as Mr. Doom and Gloom. I'm actually, I use the term cautiously optimistic. So I'm going to bifurcate the two groups of people for you. The people who will be successful this year and accomplish their growth plans, the people who will not. The people who will accomplish their growth plans right now have a very clearly defined business plan in place, right? Level one. And I know that's something that 2020 will do, right? Number two is the people who will be successful this year and accomplish their goals will also face reality as it is today, not the reality they wish it was, not the reality they hoped it'd be. You have to sort of, you can challenge reality, but you're only going to lose 100% of the time, right? And the third thing is, so you have your business plan, you're facing reality. Please understand your cost structure. Understand that, you know, there's probably going to be some margin compression. So in your cost structure, it's not just expenses. Compress your margins a little bit, see what that looks like. Reassess your system, make sure you understand the capacity utilization of your existing enterprise. And to the extent that you are successful at that, you're going to draw people to you, right? People want to be with people who it'll get around, right? Hey, Christine did a wonderful job. Was it difficult? Yeah, it was a difficult 6 months, but we did this. My business grew. I understood this. You know, it really works very well. If you don't have those things in place, you're going to have a challenging year. But just by being on this call and associating yourself with 2020, you've already sort of self-selected yourself to be in that category, honestly. So I wish you all the best of luck. I'm always available if anyone has any questions or comments. And Kristen, I really, really want to thank you for inviting me. I don't get a chance to do this often enough. I love, if people have not attended the 2020 Vision Summit, forget the fact that I've spoken at it. I don't attend a ton of things because time is very precious, but I will tell you, you will get a lot out of it, as I have.
Well, thank you, Joe. You know, you're like, you're one of my mentors in life and in business. I continue to look up to you. You taught me so much. I thank you for giving me a 12-year ride. We're still riding together. It won't surprise you. The day I opened my doors, Joe was client 0. He was, or 1. He literally bought the first program the day we became open for business. And that's a great thing when someone doesn't kick you in the ass on your way out of the door and say good riddance. So Joe, your insight as always is very pertinent and timely. I will be sure to be here to make sure that what you just said is connecting with our professionals here in a way that they can actually make movement and execution into their markets and into their databases and into their realtor circles and you know, places that are going to convert this into actual volume, because I think there's no greater thing I can do for everybody that's here than help them connect the dots this year, which is exactly why you're here today at the What's the Big Deal in 2022. So Joe, thank you for your contributions. Stay as long as you'd like or can. I know you're a busy man, and if not, you're going to get the recording, and I know you'll listen to Barry's speech later when you get that. So
I will have it on the background all day. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right, guys.
Thank you,
was
everybody.
great. Thank you. All right.